Well, good afternoon to the Flagstaff community, to our broader Arizona community, our national and international community. We are excited to be bringing you this special session on MotherWit, Black motherhood, and what that means within the Black community and the broader community. I am excited to be joined today by a very extensive and impressive panel of folks who bring motherhood to the table in a number of different ways as we dive into what it means to be a mother, what are the different forms of motherhood, and how does that have impact on our lived experience as Black women and as Black people. If you've been watching the series for the past couple of weeks, we had a session recently on Black motherhood from the perspective of Black men. I highly encourage anyone, if you didn't get a chance to see that, to dive into that and hear just the powerful impact of different forms of motherhood on Black men within our community and their definitions of what that means. But today we want to come to you with a very special look at Black motherhood from Black mothers. Again, that motherhood is going to take on many different forms and is going to be defined in a number of different ways. And we're excited to hear from each of our presenters today what that looks like and means to each of them. I'm going to ask each person to just briefly introduce yourself as we get started. I'll start. My name is Khara House. I am the Ms. Bernadine calls me the resident facilitator, and I proudly take that title. I serve currently as the Director of Community Engagement for Bella Investment Group here in Flagstaff. I also serve as the chair of the Coconino County African Diaspora Advisory Council and a member of the Southside Community Association, as well as a number of different organizations that I'm part of here in Flagstaff. Dr. Moore, we'll go to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Tracye Moore. I am chair of the Dental Hygiene Department here in Flagstaff, Arizona at Northern Arizona University School of Dental Hygiene. I am mother to 63 students, basically.
Dr. Allen.
Hello, all. I am Treya Allen. I am the manager for diverse and inclusive advising practice at the University of Arizona and African American Studies faculty at Pima Community College.
Amber Jones.
Hello, everyone. I'm Amber Jones. I am currently a research coordinator at the Pathogen and Microbiome Institute at Northern Arizona University. I'm also currently serving as the vice chair for the Coconino County African Diaspora Advisory Council, and I am mom to two very energetic and wonderful girls, ages 3 and 4.
Dr. Peten.
Hi, good afternoon, all. I am currently retired. I am the mother of 2 sons, and I have 9 grandchildren, ages from 2 to 26. I retired from education. I started teaching in Newark, New Jersey, went on up to become, and then when I moved here, I became a principal, construction manager, school superintendent, and I also served 3 years in the Arizona House of Representatives for Legislative District 4. So it's a pleasure to be here with you, and I hope to be enlightened. Thank you.
Ms. Deb Harris.
Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for allowing me to be in this space. I'm Deborah Harris. I am retired, Associate Dean of Students from Northern Arizona University, going on 4 years now. I am the mother to 1 son, and I've literally mothered thousands of students over my 35 years of higher ed experience. So lots of mothering experience. Thank you.
And Ms. Thomas.
Shawn Thomas. I am by profession, I'm an educator, by morning, noon, and night. I am the mother of 2 girls. Ms. Jones, hold on to your hat because those energetic ones definitely grow up to give you a run for your money. I have a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old that are just my absolute inspiration. And everyone on this panel that I'm familiar with has mothered me as well as my children. So thank you.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. And I just want to open this conversation up with a pretty seemingly basic question, but it is by no means necessarily an easy one. When we talk about the lived Black experience, especially when it comes to Black family, what is Black motherhood? What does it mean to be a mother in the Black community? And I'll open that up to anyone who'd like to start us off today.
Well,
I think the biological start first. So let the biological.
I can't believe we were even silent. As you were saying that, what I heard in my head was my mother's voice. And I will tell you that in my home growing up, my mother was revered. And she was the center of all things. And 2 things that she often said that I remember is, 1, do you want some unsolicited advice? Or no, not do you want, let me give you some unsolicited advice. That was number 1. And number 2 was, don't sell yourself short. And so I feel like, to me, what mothering and motherhood represents is sort of like that central hub, which can be exhausting, but does have its benefits. Resource, knowledge, love, nurturing, firmness, all of those things. But it's not confined to being a biological mother.
I have a thought.
Can I just jump in here?
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Deb.
Dr. Okay, I'll go ahead. Can you all hear me? Because it seems like my internet is coming in and out.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay, great, thanks. I think Shawn put it in that's a great nutshell to put it in. The only thing that I would add to that is that I think for me, motherhood is unconditional love. While we may not always like what our kids are doing or what other children are doing, other people are doing, but I think that that unconditional love comes through for those of us who mother other people. And I think that that love allows us to tell them our truth. Whether they hear that or not is a different story. But I think that that love is important. And I think it's important for people to be able to feel that love and for us to show that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dr. Peten.
Okay, thank you. In reflecting back on my mother and how we were raised, my mother was a single mom of 3 kids. We were part of that great migration that came from the South to the North in 1955. And if you can imagine, those are Jim Crow years, and discrimination was about as bad as it is now. But the main thing that my mother taught the 3 of us was resilience. And it was interesting when I was teaching, you know how they have those professional development classes and what have you, and they actually had a professional development on resilience. And so I'm listening, they're defining it, giving examples. And I thought, well, darn, that's what my mother has always done. You know, you make a way where there is no way. If it's to be, it's up to you. She lived the whole example of resilience. You never give up, and your whole purpose is to survive and take care of your children and your family. And that was the main thing. And also with regards to just striving, you do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do. But through it all, you were resilient and you survived, and failure was never an option. And my mother lived that very well. And and has passed those values on to her 3 kids, and I've passed them on to my 9 grandchildren, and it will get us through many dark days. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's head to our top row.
So I was sitting here thinking about all the ways, I think the other part of that question is like, what is Black motherhood in a Black community? And quite honestly, like if you're thinking about biological birth, it is the center of the creation of the Black community. Like there is no Black community without people who identify as Black mothers. And I say that because a lot of times we associate motherhood with gender, but what about people who don't specifically think about themselves in the binary sense? So there's that piece of it. But then I also think about the circles of motherhood. So all the aunties, the grandmothers, the Mrs. Johnsons or Miss Lindas, you know, who quickly became, for me and my siblings, aunties, but were my mother's like really good friends, right? And an extension of her mothering. I was just thinking about the time where I was like in elementary school and I absolutely refused to back down from a teacher who tried to weaponize my mother against me. And because my mother couldn't get there, my Aunt Linda showed up and backed me, like, and then afterwards was like very quickly like, don't you ever do that again and disrespect someone, but was willing to back, right? 8-year-old Treya, who would not back down from a teacher who was like, well, I'm going to call your mom. My mom had always taught us, right, as a protective instinct to, you don't have to go up against adults. You can say your piece and continue to say, call my mom, and like sing it if you have to. But when Miss Linda showed up, or Auntie Linda, right, as we call her, what it communicated to us was that it wasn't just my mom who was willing to protect us. It was also this community, this like circlehood of mothers. So if my grandmother couldn't get there or any of my aunts related by blood, I knew Auntie Linda would show up, right? In ways that we don't, like she had no sanguineous connection to any of us, but she loved my mother enough to love anything that came out of my mother, including her children. And so when I think about motherhood, I think about like the nurturing aspect of, this is the center of Black communities, because without them, there wouldn't be a Black community.
That's great. Dr. Moore?
I would like to just piggyback off what Dr. Allen just said, because there are many of us who are not biological mothers. However, we mother in the sense that we're nurturing students. We're nurturing nieces who are good friends of ours. We are nurturing and mentoring African-American students in our programs. For example, my program is predominantly white female. Dental hygiene is 85% white female dominated profession. So when I have one Black student or sometimes Hispanic students in my program, I pull them to the side and I support them. There are times when they have difficulty getting through certain courses. And I say, do you need a tutor? What do you need? Because you're going to get through this. And they say, you don't understand. I say, I do understand. Are you first generation? They say, yes. I say, okay. So this is not just a cultural thing. It is a worldwide situation where you have traditionally students of color do not do well in STEM subjects. So therefore you have Black role models such as Dr. Allen, such as myself, who are there to show these students, say, yes, you can be a hygienist. Yes, you can be a doctor. Yes, you can get through this program. And I have talked students out of quitting, Hispanic students. They wanted to quit. And I said, you're not going to quit because it's bigger than just you. Your aunties, your uncles are dependent upon you to get through this program. You'll be the main provider of income for your families. And they're like, yes, how did you know? I said, because it's not just a strictly Hispanic thing. It's a cultural thing that goes beyond that divide. It's not just indicative to just your culture. I understand, even though I may not be Hispanic, I come from a Black background. My family is Black, and I get it. You're first gen, you know, the weight of the world is on your shoulders. You got to get through this program. So whatever I can do to help you, I'm here for you. And they are like shocked because I've helped Native students, I've helped Hispanic, and of course I'm going to help my brown students. But I do it in a way where the other faculty and students don't feel so marginalized. I try to do it in a quiet, a secretive way so that they don't see that I have a favorite, but eventually it does come out. And they always have a problem with, well, why is Dr. Moore mentoring Ali, for example? He's one of my Saudi Arabian, his skin is my complexion, but he's a Saudi Arabian graduate. And he had some major issues. And he would come to my office every day and he would say to me, you're like my school mom. And I said, you know what? I don't have a problem being your school mom because you need that support because your mother's in Saudi Arabia. So here I am being his mom away from home. And so I think that for us, even though we're not biological parents, we know how we were raised by our parents. I know how my mother raised me, and I instill those values into my students. And I have a stepdaughter as well, and I instill how I was raised into her. And quite often she'll tell me, Miss Tracye, I was raised by two different moms, by you and by my real mom, but I like the way you raised me better. Well, and it makes me feel good. You know, because I felt like, well, maybe I didn't do something right because I'm not a biological mom. But I think that even though I don't have any biological children, that mother instinct kicked in with her. And I just took how my mother's a Southern mother. My mother's straight from Savannah, Georgia. So all those Southern roots are instilled in me. And I instilled those same types of concepts and values into her. And she values that and takes the opportunity whenever she can to let me know that, you know, I really appreciate how you raised me, which was different from the way my biological mom raised me. So I feel kind of good in that regard. And so, again, as to piggyback off of what Dr. Allen said, yes, we may not be biological mothers, but we are mothers in another sense because we can have that communal spirit. We have that mentorship. We have that support. And we make sure that our students, our quote unquote nieces, nephews, they feel that love. And I think whether they align with the binary, non-binary, they just need to know that love and support is there for them. Because I've had students who have quote unquote no family members because they are quote unquote out and they find support at school. And I love them. I support them no matter what. And so we have to, again, like Dr. Allen said, think out of that box and think, you know, motherhood is more than just what we're thinking, the Western dynamic of a biological mom. It extends beyond that. It does take a village. Thank you.
Thank you. And Miss Jones.
I just love what has already been said. And especially this idea of, you know, you don't have to just mother. The responsibility of being a mother is not just on your own biological children. It's just like there's strength, there's balance, there's, you know, kindness while also teaching resilience. And that extends outside of, you know, the nuclear family, which I really appreciate because I'm still trying to answer that question for myself. Like I was raised, my mother is white. So I didn't just have her though. I had, you know, my grandmother, my aunties, and especially when I came up here and I was looking for community because I was so far away from my family, being able to find other women in the community who have taken me in as their own has always just kind of blown me away. They're willing to be there. I feel responsible. Like it gives me this sense of responsibility to them. Like I can't let them down, but I also know that they're there if I need anything. And that's been, so just leading by example has been so important because it's been such, you know, especially with young girls who can pass, it's really important to me to have that, you know, that community with those other mothers because it does take a village and it's so incredibly hard. Like you said, you have, like as a mother, you have the weight of the world on your shoulders. So not only like mothering your kids or other kids, but also being there to connect with other mothers and, you know, building that network of strength because it takes a lot.
Yeah, those are all such great and powerful answers to that question. And you know, like we said, it is not a simple question and it's not a simple answer because of all of those different forms motherhood takes. I want to talk quickly about one of the terms that's used in the title of this session, which is MotherWit. It's a phrase that I was telling these ladies before the session started. You know, I had heard before, but I did not understand really what it meant. So I'd like to hear from the different folks on this panel, you know, what is MotherWit to you? And what does that mean? What does it look like? How would you define it? Miss Deb, I see you laughing down there, so I'm going to start with you.
You know, I haven't heard that term in a while. I used to hear it a lot when I was younger and when I was at home with my grandmother and my aunts, you know, and they would talk about, you know, that girl's got MotherWit, or, you know, he's got MotherWit, or whatever. And it really, you know, we intuitively, or I intuitively kind of knew what it meant just because of who they were talking about and what they were talking about. But a lot of people, I think I was talking to one of the young women and they were saying, MotherWit, I've never heard that. And I was like, okay, so probably because you haven't spent a lot of time around your grandmother or your older aunts or, you know, older people, but it is a very old term. And I'm not sure where it probably came from. Maybe it's more Southern than anything else, but it really does put things in perspective. When you have MotherWit, you are a survivor. You know how to manipulate, not in a negative way, but you know how to deal with situations. You have that resiliency. You understand, you know, the nuances of things. How do you get that MotherWit? I think you get that MotherWit from sitting at that kitchen table and keeping your ears open when they're, you know, having you cut potatoes or chop onions or whatever. You're learning that MotherWit at that table or in that kitchen or in that living room, wherever those spaces are where women gather, and they share that MotherWit, you know, how to deal with situations. So that's why I was kind of laughing, because some of the younger women haven't heard that term, but that's basically, and we still do that. You know, Amber and I do it all the time when we have lunch together. You know, I'm sharing that MotherWit with her about, you know, how to deal with different situations. I do that with you, Khara, when we're talking about different things, you know, and I can tell, even to some extent, you know, Shawn and I, you know, when she was here, we talk all the time about whatever's going on and happening. So we're sharing that MotherWit, that survival, that resiliency, you know, how you deal with situations and how you make it through. So, yeah, great.
Go ahead, Dr. Moore.
So my mother is from the South, and she has used that term quite often because my grandmother would use that term, MotherWit. And so it comes from when a child is growing up, and there are times when we see a child and you say that child has an old soul. So that young child could be 5 or 6 years old, but that child demonstrates MotherWit, the wisdom of an older person, or talks like they're an older person. And so it stems from a little bit of using the God-given sense that God gave all of us, and using that and applying it in a situation that could be a little bit challenging or difficult, like what Khara Harris said, your resiliency. And so it's a combination of using good old common sense and being resilient, but at the same time, seeing someone who's young use that in a very mature way, a mature manner, using your MotherWit or your mother wisdom, the wisdom that your mother has passed down from generations, from great grandmother to grandmother to daughter. And so you use that wisdom that your ancestors have given you and you apply it in difficult situations, and that maintains your resiliency. So my mother quite often will say, I'm using my MotherWit, or she'll say, oh, you're using your MotherWit. So it is a Southern term, yes. And quite often even though I'm not old, the older generation, I'm sort of kind of young, I still think that it's applicable to today. You know, you do have situations where anyone can use your MotherWit, but it's not a term that we pass around a lot. But we need to go back to some old style ways of using things and applying things, because that will keep the Black community together. And so MotherWit is wisdom passed down from your great grandmother to grandmother to daughter that you apply to maintain your resiliency and to get through difficult situations. Just like Dr. Treya Allen, she's been challenged where she is at ASU. I've been challenged here at NAU. And there are times when I have to call Miss Deb to help me generate that MotherWit to figure things out, because my mom, she can't help me here at NAU, but Miss Deb has the wisdom and the years of being here at NAU. And so I go to her and say, Ms. Deb, we need to have a conversation. Help me get through this. And she will then transfer that quote unquote knowledge to me, applying her mother wit, so that I can apply my mother wit to get through my challenging situations at NAU. So that is, to me, my interpretation of mother wit. Thank you.
I want to add that I think inherent in it is the understanding that it's something that is insightful and in many ways goes against the dominant narrative, right? Because the world will tell you one thing. In my context, I just remember my mother being concerned about what peers were telling me, or what the non-Black people that I would encounter in my world growing up would tell me. And so for me, my mother would decipher what was going on around me and then give me like the real deal, basically. So I think that it's definitely all of those things that have been said, but it is on some level, it is a counter narrative because it's what you need to know. It's the traditional knowledge, it's the traditional wisdom that may or may not be put forth or validated out in the world at large. But this is what you need to know. This is the mother wit that will make you resilient, that will keep you safe.
And to that point, I'd like to add, I agree with what all has been said so far, and I won't repeat it because it was just really profound. For me, what it is, my mother was born in Georgia, so she's from the South too, but I don't think I ever heard that term of mother wit. It was just said. And to me, it's the voice. My mother has passed. I am from the older generation, but it's the voice that you hear in your head. You can't, and it's like your mother never leaves you. When you're doing something, you can just hear your mother telling you what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and that kind of thing. So to me, it is the wisdom, it's the guidance that we need to live better lives. And when I was growing up, I always said this after, I realized about sex and what have you, is that we didn't need any birth control. My mother was my birth control. Like if I tried to do something or something, I would hear my mother's voice, and you just couldn't go forward with anything with your mother's voice in your head. So, and those voices, those are good voices. Those are the voices of conscious, the voice of your mother's conscious, her guidance. And I think it's always with you, and it's a good thing. So thank you.
So when I heard this is the first time I've heard mother wit, was when I was asked to do this. So I had no idea, and I've been trying to kind of figure out, is it similar to mother's intuition? And I think what I've come to is that there's mother's intuition, but then there's the mother wit that kind of helps you trust that intuition. So it's not just like, because there's the gut feelings where you're like, I know what's best for my child, but there's some unlearning that goes along, like Shawn was saying, where there's a lot of outside influences. You want to be, keeping up with the Joneses. You want to have the perfect kids, perfect life, all that stuff. But so if for like personal experience, it took me a long time to kind of get rid of all of that, trust my intuition, and then reach out for the knowledge to then go, okay, I can back this up. And this is why, like, I was talking to like Miss Deb, and you know what, this, like, she told me this, I have this feeling, I'm going to go with it. And it's amazing because it hasn't really failed me yet. Like, I usually regret when I don't trust that mother wit. So it's been an interesting journey, that's for sure.
Well, I love what Dr. Peten was saying about, hearing that voice in your head that tells you, this is the right thing to do, or this is how you should proceed on this. For me, myself, I always joked with my brother about, our behavior. I'm going to say we were good kids. I think we were good kids, but there was a certain standard that when we got within a certain distance from our home, you suddenly, like, there was that change of, I don't care that I'm 5 blocks away. I don't care that now I'm thousands of miles away from home. My mother is going to hear me in whatever I'm saying and whatever I'm about to do. My mom or my dad is going to hear what I'm about to say. I think it applies when you're looking at social media now. Like, I don't post certain things because my aunts are on Facebook. My whole family is on Facebook, and they are going to see it and have a standard that they have set for me. So I love that that idea of just that shared wisdom and knowledge and way of being. Dr. Allen, I wasn't sure if you were saying that you also had not heard that phrase before. Are you familiar with that, the term of MotherWit, or now that you've heard more about it, how have you seen that maybe in your experience?
So I had never heard the term, and I do have a parent who is from the South. I never heard this term before. I saw it in writing, and I was like, I don't even know what that is. So the nerd that I am, I went to look up the etymology of the word. We all know this. Nobody is shocked here about this. And like listening to everyone describe it, I don't think it's a term we ever use, but it's that knowing. So like, I always knew, like, don't show your behind once you get out from, you know, the parameters of the supervision of your community. I always have a healthy fear that what I do is going to get back to my mother. Even if she's not there, I could be in another country, and it really like defines the way that I comport myself, right? But then I think that there's also, for those of us, or for those who are watching who have lost a mother, how other mothers show up and they become the voice in your head, or they become the standard by which you apply like decisions and those sorts of things. So I've seen it show up this way, right? But I also think for those of us who do have mothers and you're navigating certain spaces, the thing that comes to mind is like the dissertation process. And two of the ladies in here mothered me through that. Like one of them was there at my finish. So Dr. Tam was there at my finish. Dr. Okoye, who is not here, was there in the room with me, like basically letting me know it'll be okay. I called Professor Thomas's husband, who could not be there. And I was like, do you think your wife will come? Because it would make everything better, right? Because it was just a really arduous process. And my mother, you know, thank God, is still alive and with me, but did not understand these things. And right. And so just having these other mothers in the room to kind of take you through this process of getting to the finish. And then when like all three of them showed up randomly at this conference where I was presenting, and presented right before me, right? And it was so amazing because I was like, oh, my people are here in the room. And I think that even if you didn't have a mother or you don't have that voice, so whatever you believe in, the universe, God will always provide MotherWit through the forms of other people, even if you didn't have that as a staple. And so that's the way that it showed up for me. That's the way that I've experienced it. And I know that in my position, you know, at the U of A or the University of Arizona, I try and show up this way for other students in the same way that Dr. Moore was talking about, like, you know, that even though they don't belong to me, I try and comport myself so that I am the voice when they do want to go off in the dorm rooms, or they aren't having the best experience in a class. So I think it shows up that way as well, even though I've never heard this word before in my life.
Well, speaking of some of the different terms that are used, Dr. Allen, I want to go to a phrase that you brought up as something that you were interested in talking about. You had referenced mothering as praxis, and I'm wondering if you can define what that is and what that looks like.
So praxis, you know, basically is just the pluralized form of practice. So mothering as practice. I teach and I work at predominantly white institutions, right? And the way that I was reared was within this circle of mothers. My mother was a single parent after a failed divorce. And I had all these aunties, like, right? All these aunties that were related by blood or, you know, also my mother's what she called her very best good girlfriends, as well, who took responsibility, right? Who were really trying to make my mother's life easier because she's navigating this world as a single Black woman with these two girls at the time. And this is before she got married again. And because I had all these examples, when I entered into my own practice as an educator, it was just so ingrained in me that the way that we get the lone Black student who has to sit in Calc 1, who is struggling to figure out if they belong there or not, that they needed an advocate or a mother or a mentor on campus, right? So we call it mentorship as the professional term, but really it comes down to mothering, right? And creating these underground mothering networks at predominantly white institutions. So it's not just me that they come to. I can also connect you with a mother who is in political science or a mother who's in the math department. And so this practice of mothering really has historical roots for Black communities, right? Especially if you were on this piece of land and your mother had been sold off, then you were like enveloped into the community and given a surrogate, if you will, a surrogate mother. And these mothering networks, or this idea of the practice of motherhood, is really what we know in our community as the saving grace for a lot of our students who are on Black campuses. I mean, on predominantly white campuses. But this practice of motherhood, or these underground mothering networks, were also available for my own children when they were in K through 12. And now that all three of them are in college now, it's also available so that if I could not be there, then there's somebody else there. I'll tell you, it's not just for the community or the campus, the local campus. I've also had and been fortunate to participate in ways where there is somebody who lives in another city or another state who says, what college or what school are you going to? Oh, the University of Arizona. I know somebody there. So then they would call me and say, my kid is coming. I need you to care for my kid in the same way. And so this practice of motherhood, right? These underground retention networks, whatever you want to call them, these mothering networks, the auntie network, whatever you call it, these are both historical, they're generational, they're ancestral. It is the way that we have always been in our community, even dating back to Africa, right? Or wherever in the diaspora you landed and your ancestors landed and you're derived from. It's always been there, but westernized knowledge system says that it's inappropriate for me to have this type of relationship with you that is not prescriptive, that is not transactional. For me to say that I love my students like I love my children is deemed inappropriate. And so the practice of mothering is very radical in that sense. And motherhood as praxis, right? It's not just me telling you what to do, but it's also me saying I will be responsible to feed your development. I will be somebody who is willing to say, no, you're messing up here. Stop that. Don't do that. And so like just the prime example I can think of is finishing my doctorate degree and having Ms. Thomas, Professor Thomas say, you're okay. You got it. Having Dr. Tam there at the ceremony saying, you need to get in this line because we will be on time. And having, even being able to afterwards kind of join this sacred circle, feeling like after I presented after them and getting their approval, y'all, that to me unleashed me as a mother that I could go and do this for other students once you have the approval of other people who have mothered you through this practice, through the praxis or the practice of mothering. And the powerfulness, just being powerful in that has been something else. Like it's the reason why I adopted a college student at the age of like 20. Right. So I have a whole other child that didn't come from me, but I had such great models in this practice of mothering that are here in this room that I can text and call anytime I have an issue. So that's what I mean by the practice of mothering.
I just want to piggyback on that with Dr. Allen with regard to the practice of motherhood. And so do you guys find that there's an intersectionality that occurs? Because if you are the quote unquote mother on campus in your department, but then at the same time, you're also the recruitment and retention and diversity chair. Do you find that there's a intersection that occurs between the different dynamics? In addition to you have to do your regular job, you're also the the lone African-American female. Okay, then you're also the mother to the minority students. And then you're also the recruitment diversity person or point of contact. Do you find that there are any challenges associated with that? That's my question for anyone who wants to answer.
I think it goes back to what Dr. Allen was just saying in terms of the expectation within a Western culture that things be transactional, which really is goes against the embodied knowledge that we have of the role of women and mothers in most societies and cultures. So I find myself holding back, because especially my nature is to hug, to comfort, and to nurture. But as an educator, we're told don't hug, don't comfort, don't nurture, or at least to find other ways to do it. So I feel that it is difficult because it's striking a balance to do something that has been, for lack of a better word, demonized. And I'm not saying that in some cases it's not warranted. Please don't misunderstand that. I'm just saying this whole idea of caring for one another and nurturing for one another and building community is not what's being promoted in most places and most workplaces. Well, I think now, of course, with the pandemic, we're having an emphasis on social emotional health and work-life balance. And I would submit that that is a traditional framework to which we should return, that it's nothing new. We might call it something new, but the act of mothering is a way of being in the world. It's not just something that I do from time to time, it's who I am.
I'm just gonna jump in here for a minute. And I totally agree with everything that Shawn, has said. It is difficult when you're on a predominantly white campus, and that's not the culture of the campus. But for me, 35 years in higher ed, I've always mothered students. I made a very conscious decision to work at a historically white institution because I knew that somebody needed to be there for those kids that could not go to historically Black institutions. And that somebody was me. So I think that for all those years that I served, as whatever it was that I served as, housing, associate dean, whatever, my role was to nurture and mother those students that came through my door, that came past my, desk or whatever. And I think that, and my colleagues that worked at NAU along with me, can tell you that, I was always concerned about the students and what was going on with them and where were they going to go for Thanksgiving and, who needed what and when, where and how. And I was always trying to gather resources for them. I think that by nature, that's my nature, is to mother. I can't help it. I can't do it any other way. I find that I still do that with the younger people that are still in my circle, but I try not to be overbearing. I think, you have to be careful with that. But I think that parents on historically of Black students or students of color on historically white campuses, they look for those folks that can nurture their children because they know that they're not there. And I think one of the most powerful things that ever happened to me while I was at NAU was and I remember this couple, this family. I was talking to the father out in the hallway, and the mother came up and introduced me to the mother, and we talked for an hour because the kid was off doing orientation. Went back in my office. At the end of the day, those parents brought their daughter to me, and this is going to make me get emotional. They brought their daughter in my office, and they say, "Ms. Harris, we are leaving our child in your custody. We are leaving our child with you, and we trust that you're going to take care of her." They didn't know me from Adam or Eve. From Adam or Eve, and we spent 2 hours maybe talking. But for the next 4 years, that child was a part of my family. And that family would, still to this day, we still communicate to see how things are going and whatever. So I just say that to say that I think that as parents of young people, we look for folks to nurture our children. I mean, I have a 41-year-old. I still look for people in California to nurture him. Every time I can find a connection for him, I'm still looking for people to do that for him. So I just think that that's just part of who some of us are, and that's just who I am. So I didn't want to go on for a long time, but I just thought that was important, to say that culturally for a lot of us, that's what we do because it's important. It's maybe it goes back to that whole village thing. Maybe it's that inherent historical whatever that's in us that we know that we're responsible for these kids and for these people, that it's not just us. So anyway.
I want to go back to what I believe it was Dr. Peten first brought up, of that idea of resiliency. Everybody these days talks about motherhood as a superpower, and that idea that moms get it done. Moms are where all of this strength and power comes from. And I want to talk about that because I think so often, while that's true, while I know, and I think we all know that moms get it done, moms do have that innate strength and ability to get things done, that's also a pretty big burden. And I'm thinking of what Dr. Moore was just bringing up about all of those different responsibilities that can be placed on someone because of that being seen as their responsibility. And I just wonder, what are some of the unseens of motherhood? What are the struggles or the burdens that come with that? And how do you navigate those burdens that you face as whatever form of mother you happen to take on?
Can I just jump in really quickly and tell the truth about motherhood? Like, it's great sometimes, but then there are other times when it is god awful. Especially when you realize like you are shuttling, you are trying to grow well-adjusted human beings, and you are responsible for them, whether it is your students, your nieces, your nephews, children you birth, or children that you've adopted. So we paint this picture of motherhood being great, and your kids bring you cookies and flowers and everything is wonderful. But I also want to just be very real. I got divorced, and overnight I became a single parent. Overnight, and having to kind of grow up with my children, where there was 2 people, now there's 1. But then also just the taxing labor of all of it. You're responsible for the household, you're responsible for kids and their well-being. And sometimes you forget, or sometimes you lose yourself in that. And so if there are no mechanisms in place, so do you have a circle of friends that you can go to? Do you have a life outside of Yo Gabba Gabba and Sesame Street? Do you have a life? Are you reading books that are not just Fancy Nancy and Charlotte's Web? Do you have a robust identity, yourself outside of motherhood? Because it's easy to get really, really lost in it. It's also easy to fall into like these fake standards that we see on social media and news, that like the kids love you all the time. Like my whole entire world almost came to a crash behind a 9-year-old who was like, I hate you, and you were the worst thing that happened to my life. She's now 21 years old, and now she says things like, why didn't I listen before? And I'm like, we all have to go through that. But I think one of the ways that I would tell people, people who are looking to either mother students that you birth or mother children that don't belong to you, is make sure you have boundaries in place. Make sure you have an active you life, because how are you going to help somebody else and you're falling apart yourself? Eventually, what happens is you will start passing your trauma or mothering out of your own trauma right? Or taking on, you know, your mother or foremother's trauma as well, and using that to like inform the way that you parent or the way that you mother, or the way that you mentor. So really having boundaries, addressing your own stuff, having your own outlets, not getting sucked into the traps that motherhood is always great. It's not. But there are some definite beautiful moments in it, right? It's easy for me to be an auntie. I'm the world's best auntie because I made so many mistakes as a mother to my own children and to the children, or, you know, well, students that I mother as well.
And I think that the hard part is when we talked earlier about the MotherWit. I think the hardest part really is, especially as Black women and as Black mothers raising Black children, is stepping into what you know is your truth and saying no to the world around you. Because you know that you're sending children out into the world that is going to be 90% counter to everything that you have taught them or want to instill in them. And so I feel like for me, that has been the most taxing part, is teaching them, training them, and educating them at home, and then sending them out in a world, having them come back, having to pick up the pieces and do it all over again, day in and day out. You hope that they're whole, you hope that they're well, you hope that they're resilient. But in the meantime, you're picking up the pieces because we're all keenly aware, whether they are male or whether they are female or however they identify, we are keenly aware that we are Black and this is America. And so for me, that has been the most difficult and traumatic portion of it, because it's like a cloak that they can't shed, and that invades and covers and colors everything that they do.
I like to add to that. I totally agree. And I feel that we as Black mothers live with that wit, wisdom, and worries. No one has actually used the phrase yet, but that talk we always give our children, that whatever they encounter in the world, they are to be respectful, professional, and what have you. And I used to tell my sons, your only job is to get back home alive. And then your father and I can go out into the world and defend whatever issues you've encountered. But we can't do that if you're dead. So and I think that is so ingrained in our DNA, as Dr. Allen has said, going all the way back to our roots, our ancestral roots. We have always been worried about our children, whether they will actually live, you know, and be able to thrive and survive. And that's truly one of the biggest fears. And then it never ends. You think it's going to end when they get to be 40. But it doesn't, you know, that you're always worried about them. I don't know, how old was George Floyd? You know, there is no end to that kind of worry. And that to me, it has a psychological impact on us as mothers. You know, the fact that it's almost like you can't really breathe fully. You're always kind of on edge or thinking that you might get that phone call or whatever, and you're always worried for your child. And you try, hopefully you've taught them enough that they can go out and deal with all the issues in the world and come back alive. I know my son's, after we relocated here to Arizona, he shared with me once that he gets stopped about 20 times a year with racial profiling. And I feel so blessed that he has been able to maneuver that whole racist environment and gets back alive. But it's just not an easy world to maneuver. But they have been resilient and they will survive. And as I said before, failure is not an option. And even as probably my greatest role model to be a mother was my own mother. My mother was a single mother raising 3 kids. I was eventually a single mom raising 2. And I just never felt that I could not fail. And as I've said, you know, in talks with friends and what have you, I know I've had nervous breakdowns going through this stuff, but you can't appear to be nervous, and you sure can't afford to be broken down. So somehow you got to suck it in and get it together, and especially to stay strong for your children. You cannot let your children know what you're going through. You know, if you're juggling bills or relationships or whatever, you cannot drag them into your mess, as it may or may not be. And that's truly how I raised my kids, and it so far so good. I should knock on wood. But it's that wit, worry, and wisdom that we pass on to them. Thank you.
Can I just ask, did Black women even have language for what it means to still have to mother in the middle of a breakdown? Did we even have the language of breakdown? Did we have the language of trauma? Did we have, and as soon as you said it, Peten, I was like, my mother, like by today's standards, I definitely remember her having breakdowns, like mental breakdowns, and then having to go to her room, lock the door, get it together, because she still had to go to work the next day. She still had 2 kids that she still had to provide for, right? I don't even know that Black women I don't know if they had access to the language of, and in some very real ways, I still don't know that Black women have access to the language of what does it mean to mother through trauma, through a mental breakdown, through chronic fatigue, especially if you're on a predominantly white campus where you are constantly mothering racialized students who, because of your effectiveness, bring their friends. Even do we have access to this language now? That's what your comment made me think of.
I'm just gonna kind of add something here. You know, I don't know if we had language or if I had language, but I think that I was able to observe those breakdowns and then try and figure out from there. My mother passed away when I was, 13 or 14? But before that, I knew that there was something going on in the house. But she had enough mother wit to place her children in homes before she passed away. So I kind of watched that. And as a child, you really didn't know what was going on, but you kind of had a sense that something was happening. And so I think that why I don't have language for it, or why I don't think I had language for it, when I was going through similar things, you know, with just my own, you know, health issues and stuff, I immediately went to that place. Okay, now you got to do this. Now you got to do that. Now you have to put this in place. You don't have time to. I used to say I don't have time to, you know, to wallow in whatever it is I'm wallowing in. I have to be responsible to make sure that this child, if I'm not here, is going to be okay. And so I think that for me, and everybody's different, I went into action mode. I went into putting plans in place. I look back on what I saw my mother do while I didn't know what was happening then, but I remembered, you know, when my situation came, is that's how she handled it. So I think that we might not have language, but maybe we have models that we pull from when we're going through this stuff. And you know, maybe I have had nervous breakdowns and I just didn't know it. I'm sure I have. So anyway, you know, I think that's maybe the language of modeling might be what we have.
Yeah, I think we've all had nervous breakdowns, but we didn't call it that because you didn't have that luxury of labeling it as such. I think, as I think I shared earlier, my mom's thing was make a way where there is no way. And when you know that, you know, you're in a crisis situation, you know you have to get out of it. There's a plan A, B, C, D. I mean, you keep coming up with methods of solving your problems until it is solved. And I didn't have the term for this either until I was much older, but I was raised with an internal locus of control. And that's not true in all cultures. I'm thinking specifically of Native American cultures I've worked with. They have an external locus of control. I think we as Black people have an internal locus of control, meaning if it's up to be, it's up to me. So we look within ourselves for the power and strength to carry on. And we know that that is our primary source. And then we look to the village, as we've talked about earlier, close friends and families that can support us. But the main thing, and I've thought about this too, is something that I want to make sure I teach my granddaughter, my grandchildren, but specifically my granddaughters, to let them know that they have the courage and the strength to become anything they want to be. Is all within them. They have it. They don't need to go searching for anything. You are enough. You're enough to do anything you want, and you need to believe that and act on it throughout your whole life. And because I think looking to get power and strength from somebody else, of course, most of us believe in a higher being, as I do as well. But you have to really, truly believe that you have that strength and you have that power, and you can accomplish whatever you put your mind to. So
I think that there wasn't the language for expressing trauma, difficulty, or any of those things, because we also didn't have the language for self-care, health, wholeness, and mental health aspects of mothering. So, I mean, it wasn't a consideration. As Dr. Peten is saying, you did what you had to do, period. You picked up the pieces, you gathered up your tent, and you moved on. And so I feel that, and it's kind of a two-edged sword. There was a meme that was going around a couple of years ago where the mother has, the house is a complete wreck, the kids are going crazy, and she's like, I need some me time. And the older woman looks at her and says, me time? You need to get up, put up, and pick up. That's what you need to do. So I think that there are two sides of the same coin that we would not, I'm thinking of my own mother who died young, we didn't have the language of trauma because she also didn't have the language for self-care. And so I try to learn also from that model of what she did do, but also what she didn't do. Of course, no disrespect to her.
Amber, I want to make sure you have an opportunity to speak into this as well. Did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I do. So kind of back to a previous comment, which is what being a mother is about. I think one of the hardest things I struggled with was just the mental load, because you're dealing with, all of the things that has been said. You're trying to raise, strong, resilient children that are going to go out into a world that is going to be incredibly cruel. But how do you do that while juggling a household? You're trying to, have time to spend with your friends and your tribe. You're trying to spend time with, if you have a partner, you're trying to get that in. What's going to go on for dinner? When are the kids going to be at X, Y, or Z? And it just builds and builds and builds. And I would argue that, a lot of people in my generation still don't talk, they don't have words for themselves like that. How do you mother during trauma or postpartum? I struggled with postpartum, and it's just how do you do that? This is one of my littles. So I think it's still really hard to take the time to just be like, okay, I'm going through something very difficult. How do I get the help? How do I continue to be a mother without completely losing myself in the process? Which is, both of mine are biological, and I completely lost myself. I was gone. I didn't know who I was. I didn't have a tribe. I didn't have a lot of people to talk to or pull strength from. And I've seen other people where it's just they're completely lost in motherhood. They can't connect anymore. They're feeling terrible because they can't connect with their kids. They just can't function anymore. So I don't know exactly where I'm going with this, but I think it's important to talk about the MotherWit, actually talking about it and introducing those words. So if you are having a mental breakdown, what do you do if you don't have that example? You talk to somebody. they like, you know, I'll take your kids. It's going to be okay. So I think just being a mother, I think is so contingent on having your tribe, having the people there to support you, because you can't do it by yourself. You'll fall apart. So that's what I would like to add.
You know, we brought up George Floyd, and of course, we're not too far removed from the verdict that was reached in that case. And I think one of the powerful images of motherhood that came from that was the outcry that came from a community of mothers when it was heard through that video of his death, some of his final words being calling for his mother. And just that being the breaking point for so many people, saying that, you know, things have to change, because hearing that just tore at the hearts of people. So I'm wondering, what do you take from that whole experience and that verdict, and what does it say about the nature of motherhood within the Black community, and within I keep wanting to go back to that term tribe, because again, we are all serving in some form of a mother role, even though none of us are George Floyd's mother. But being part of that experience, that shared collective experience, we all felt a little bit of that. So what do you take from the verdict in that case? What do you take from this whole movement that we're seeing throughout the country, and what is the role of motherhood within that for any of you?
All right, so let me try and take a crack at this. I have not watched the video. I've heard about it, I've read about it, I've done all of that, you know, stuff, but I could not watch that. That would be too difficult for me as a mother. And so what I take from this is that any mother or any human being that watched that video, they should be outraged by what they saw. I was outraged just hearing about it. And some people say, "Oh, you should watch it." No, I'm not going to do that, because I think that would be way too traumatic for me. He's only 5 years older than my son, you know, so I think that I could not do that. But I think that as a community and as a country and as a nation and as a world, we have to say enough is enough, and then we have to really mean it. And all of us has a responsibility to stand up and speak out, and not be silenced by other voices. Whatever they did to the officer who was responsible, that will never ever bring that son back to that mother. So nothing that they can do will ever bring that child back to that mother. But I think hopefully we could maybe stop it happening to another mother's child. And all of us have a responsibility, white, Black, Hispanic, Native, you know, whoever, to make sure that all of our children are safe, because we're all somebody's child. You know, all of those folks that have died before George and after him, they're all somebody's kid. And if we could get it into our heads to treat all of those folks out in the street that we come in contact with like they were your children, those of you that love and care about your children, then maybe things might be a little different. So I don't want to go on, because this could be a long, really conversation, you know, about this, but it was very traumatic. And I watched the verdict, some of the trial off and on, but still to this day, I have not seen the video, because I don't think I could watch that. I think that would just be too much for me. And so some of it is self-preservation too, knowing that it happened and reading about it, but choosing not to dive into it. So that's just for me.
Oh, and that's really powerful, Ms. Deb, what you say about treating everybody that we encounter as though they could be your own child. When I think about the verdict and the whole trial and the whole situation surrounding the George Floyd's and Breonna Taylor's and all of the others who have, like you said, gone before, who have lost their lives after, I think we've referenced Ella's song in so many of these sessions recently, but that's the very first thing that comes to mind is that portion of that song. Until the killing of white men, white mothers' sons is as important as the killing as Black men and Black mothers' son. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. And so just taking on that communal sense that all people are part of our community and part of our family, I think that makes a huge difference in how we engage with each other.
I'd like to share a thought. Your question was, what did that whole situation with watching Mr. Floyd cry out for his mom? The thing that I thought of was like what a strong influence Black mothers have on their children, even when they're grown. You call out for your mother. I've heard of situations. I know there was a situation years ago with a young lady being stuck on the train tracks, and the train was coming, and the person she thought of was calling her mom. And so she was later asked, why did you call your mother? And she said, well, my mother always fixes things. And I can think of that, like, I think most of us and our children feel that way. We are strong Black mothers, and that we can be depended on to work out, make a way where there is no way, to help fix the situation. My dogs have decided to join in. But you know, that was the thing I thought, you know, you have to be strong, you have to be you know, true to your own convictions too. Because I can think too, when I've been principal of schools and you're reprimanding children, and I've seen children come into the principal's office and totally disrespect their mother. And so as I've told my kids, I'm your parent, I'm not your friend. And you know, we can do friendly things, but when you will listen to me, you will do as I've asked you to do, or we need to have some serious talk. But there are children, particularly of this generation coming up, where they do not respect adults as they should, nor do they respect their parents. But I know the Black mothers I've modeled, you demand respect, you demand love. And just like I think Dr. Allen said, if your 9-year-old doesn't like you or tells you they hate you, well, that's your prerogative, but you still will obey me and respect me. So I thought that just in the midst of the greatest crisis of his life and his final crisis of his life, who he thought of was his mother. You know, he called out for his mom because the influence is everlasting. So, thank you.
I'd like to add my thoughts. So, with all of this that's been going on, what comes into my mind is Black mothers as pillars. That's where you have these like circles coming out from them, where you have, you know, you have their biological family, but you have the nieces, the nephews, the friends, and it just goes on and on. So when something like this, it doesn't just affect, because I feel like in our like the dominant culture, it's very much the nuclear family. Whatever happens to them, you know, it's not our business. We're not going to worry about them. It's their thing. We're not going to interrupt. But that's not what I see in the Black community. You have mothers that are just holding everybody up. They're the source of, you know, knowledge and love, and like what's been said. Like I like if anything goes wrong, I'm immediately on the phone with my mom. So that's really what I see. And the fact that like if when we lose somebody from our community, it doesn't just affect the mother. Like it's everybody. It ripples out into the community. And just, you feel even somebody, I didn't personally know him. I think, but it's still, anytime I hear it in the news, it hurts. Not just because I have kids, but, the people that I know, just knowing how traumatizing that must be. And, it doesn't just affect that family. It doesn't just affect her. It affects all of us. You just, you feel the ripple through the community, and it's heartbreaking because we know what it's like to be a mom. We know what it's like to give ourselves to those that are around us and who we love. And we just, I feel like we want nothing more than to see the people around us flourish. So to see all of this and, all the people before and all the people after, it's it hits all of us, and not diminishing what like his mother and what their mothers have gone through, but it's like we can still feel what's going on. It tugs on the heartstrings. I'm always really upset when that hits the news, but I also come away with just Black mothers being those pillars in the community, not thinking so little of themselves, or sacrificing so much. There's always so much sacrifice going into our kids and those that are closest to us. And I don't know where the well is from, but it's there, and it's constantly flowing. And I'm really appreciative of that. But
well, thank you all. I've been sitting and listening to you all speak, trying not to get overwhelmed just because of the strength of the different forms of motherhood that you all show within this community, within whatever communities you're serving, and the different forms that takes in your lives, and the benefit of it to the broader community. Each of you serves in leadership roles, and seeing that motherhood come forward in that leadership that you exhibit within the community, but seeing that come forward is so powerful. And I think that's also part of the heart of this whole work that we're doing with this project is, providing motherhood, providing community to a broader narrative, and sharing out these stories is helping a broader community see the importance of engaging together, being a village, coming together to share these stories, and understand, what each person is going through, and the power that each of you is bringing to the different work that you're doing. I want to give each of you a chance to just share a final word. I'll start with Dr. Moore and just go around. If there is anything that has been unsaid or any final thoughts that you'd like to share, please take the opportunity.
I think that MotherWit has been covered extensively during this conversation. I think the panelists have contributed greatly to the conversation. I think we've all covered every aspect of MotherWit, and at the end of the day, it is that wisdom that is passed down from generation to generation. And we can apply that every day in our circles, because it truly does take a village to raise a child. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Allen?
One of the things that I was thinking about is our interconnectivity, right? Intra and interconnectivity. So when I walk into a room, I typically am looking for other people who look like me, especially Black women, and then realizing that we are simultaneously siblings. We are cousins and sisters and aunties and mothers to one another, and how important that piece is, but we often neglect it, right? So having a mother from the South who I already knew on our street, please don't get in trouble because you're going to get it twice. And how much of that is missing now. And I don't know if it's just, a fear of what happens, or we've gotten so far away from that in our interconnectivity that I will let a baby hit a brick wall because it ain't one of mine. That ain't something that I got to worry about. And how important that is to kind of resurrect that and bring that back. I'm not saying y'all be out here spanking other people's kids. That is not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, if I see that you are walking towards harm because you have no knowledge of it, I think this generation only knows what it knows, as in previous generations, then I feel like it is my absolute duty, not only to your parents, whether I know them or not, to pull you to the side and say, there's a better way to do that. Not in judgment, just out of pure love. And I think that once we get back to that space, or when we start resurrecting these autochthonous practices, practices that come from our history, from our ancestry, from generations, I think that the radicalness of motherhood, and specifically Black motherhood, becomes even that much more powerful. And it's something that we can all tap in to.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. Ms. Jones?
I want to start by saying I'm so thankful for the wisdom and the love and the resilience that has come down from both maternal and paternal sides, just all of that love and strength that I can pull from just from my lineage. And I would say motherhood is hard. But if you're struggling, reach out to your community, find your people, find those people that are going to, support you through because it's not for the faint of heart, and you can do it. But if you need help, ask for it, reach out, and definitely tap into that. Because I've noticed, with having younger kids on play dates, there's some resistance on having, other people come in and parent your kids, or another woman come in and mother your kids, but it's worth it. I can't express enough how thankful I am for the community that I have here, for my own mother, and for the women who have come in and have mothered me. I think it's so valuable, and I would love to see it come back.
Thank you. Dr. Peten?
Hi. Well, it's hard to add to all that has already been said. It has been so profound, so helpful. My thinking, though, when I first started teaching in Newark, New Jersey, I had a colleague who was African and was raised in an African village, and where polygamy existed. And he stated that, he knew who his birth mother was, but all the huts or houses were in a circle, and he knew, and every mother in that village was his mother, and that's the way he was raised. And he said that each one of them had a different name for him, so he would know which mother was calling him. He would know which mother was his biological mother, but he gave them all that respect. And I'm thinking too, when I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, and I think we've also said this before, and there were no cell phones in the 50s, as you probably know, some of you. But if we did something before my mother got home, she knew about it. It was amazing. Like Mr. Joe, Miss Modestine, Miss Evelyn, everybody in that street was our parent, and we respected that. And I think we've lost a lot of that. And I can say that as having been a teacher and a school administrator, if you reprimand a child in schools and the child has done something that was wrong and needs to be redirected, in all probability, the parent will come in and attack you, not try to help reprimand or redirect the child. So we've lost a lot of that, the psychological support of, or the concept that it takes a village. Some parents refuse to have anyone say anything to their child. And with an open carry state where anybody can have a gun, I think it behooves us to be very careful and tread lightly on what we say to other people about their parents. But when you can find a group of mothers or whatever, you can do co-parenting together and people have an open mind, it's a good thing. And the other thought I had, I think Amber said something, that where do you learn all this stuff? I taught parenting in school. I mean, when I was teaching at one point. So I think we need to kind of mix it up. You know, there's an academic side, there's a lived experience side. There are incidents that you can learn from watching others or your mentors or role modeling, what have you. You have to suck in that knowledge from wherever you can and live it on a day-to-day basis. It's everything you do. It's like someone was mentioning, you know, the kitchen table when you're cooking together and just listening to the conversations that are going on. But it's just little lessons, little tidbits of things and wisdom that you kind of pick up along the way. Some of it may work for you, some of it may not, but at least hopefully you're exposed to it. But the whole thing of Black motherhood and living and raising our children is a scary thing, but we kind of it's ingrained in our daily existence and what we do to help our children strive and survive and have better lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Deb.
Yeah, well, this has been really a great conversation, and I've really enjoyed hearing from everyone. The one thing that I do want to say is that, you know, I feel blessed every day that I'm alive, that God blessed me with a child. Not everybody gets to say that. Not every woman gets to have that experience. And so for me, I was overwhelmed when I had him, and I'm still overwhelmed now. But I feel so blessed. I also feel blessed that God put me in spaces where I could be around other people's children. And that's been my mantra all through my career, is that I deal with other people's children. And in the back of my mind, I say I deal with other people's children the way I would want them to deal with my child. And so I just feel that overwhelming blessing to have that responsibility. It's not a responsibility in terms of being a mother that you can abdicate. I will forever be Lawrence's mom. That is, and I don't mind being Lawrence's mom. And so I just think that as mothers, we have to reach out to all of those folks around us who can help us to raise good children, happy, healthy, successful children. And we can't be afraid to say we don't know it all, because I for sure did not know, you know, how to raise Lawrence. And if it had not been for grandmothers and aunts and uncles and everybody else that came to my aid as a single mom to help me raise this child. And we all look back on it now and said, you know, he turned out to be a pretty good kid, you know. And so people can, you know, lots of people along the way can take ownership of the part that they had in helping to raise this child. And that's fine with me. And so I think that we have to be willing to let other people help us raise all of those children. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Deb. And Ms. Thomas.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is just to know your own limitations. And if your child has an interest or a need or whatever it is that you either don't share or don't know anything about, that also is the purpose of the village, is to fill in wherever you simply cannot. And so just to know your own limitations, and just don't be afraid to reach out. And regardless of the community of where you find yourself, is to look for those people that share similar values and share similar goals for you, for family and for kids, and it will work out. It might be a little rough getting there, but just know your own limitations and don't be afraid to reach out.
Well, again, thank you to you all. Thank you for the various forms of motherhood you bring to the communities that you serve. And thank you for sharing your stories with us today. We want to say thank you to the community as well for joining us today, for learning with us and engaging. We hope that you will take something powerful from this presentation and carry it forth into your various communities as well. We have coming up tomorrow another session of the Live Black Experience that is titled Why Your Black Life Matters to Me as a White Woman. We will be hearing from 4 women leaders in the community as to why Black lives matter to them as white women, and engaging with them in conversation about that specific aspect of their lived experiences as they interact with ours as Black members of the community. That session will be tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, so we invite you to join us then. We also have a session coming up on Wednesday on Lady Liberty, examining the history and legacy of one of the greatest gifts America has ever received, yet first rejected, and her connection to the Civil War, emancipation, and those who were once enslaved. And that session will be on Wednesday, also at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So we look forward to seeing you all back for those 2 sessions. Again, we thank you for joining us today. We invite you to go and share some time and share this message with the mothers in your lives, and just share how this session impacted you and your understanding of motherhood, and be willing to go in and just thank those who serve that role. And again, for myself, I say thank you to each of the women on this panel today for the work that you're doing, for the motherhood that you bring to your communities, and for sharing your stories with us. As always, to those joining us, we say thank you for your engagement. Go out, enjoy the rest of your day, and as always, be blessed. Thank you.